for the meeting. All right, Madam Chair, the first thing is the approval of the minutes from the February meeting.
Okay, and I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the February meeting. Do I get a motion?
Make a motion. So move. Second.
Who was the second? I apologize.
Right, boy.
I'll second John Perlman.
John, okay. Great.
So it has been moved and seconded that the meeting minutes from February are approved. Chris will take us through the agenda this morning.
Yes, ma'am. The next thing on the agenda is presentation for tax allocation district from Geoff Koski of KB Advisory Group. Just for a little background reference, when we adopted the TAD plan, the mayor and council appointed the Downtown Development Authority to be the official redevelopment agency for the city. And so the DDA will actually be managing the tax allocation district on behalf of the city. And so what I wanted to do was have Mr. Koski come on. He and his firm are the ones that actually developed the plan for the city of South Fulton. And so wanted him to come and give the DDA some background information so they kind of understand some of the inner workings of the TAD, some things we can do, things we can't do, and then how that affects, impacts the work that you do as DDA members. And so, Mr. Koski, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and you can begin your presentation when you're prepared.
All right, thanks, Chris. Let's see here. Sorry about this. The ubiquitous technology pause. So we get things going. Okay. So again, it's a pleasure to be with you, Geoff Koski, KB Advisory Group. We were formerly known as Blakely Advisory Group, actually, when we did this work for you all back last year. So we just changed our name. Same people doing the same things, but it was a pleasure working with Chris and the city and getting getting the redevelopment plan in place, getting 2 TADs set up with 1 redevelopment plan. And pleasure to be with you all, and I'm happy to hear that you all will be the redevelopment agent with this. Today, I want to just talk briefly about kind of TADs in general. I'm just coming in with the assumption that there may be some of you that know a lot about TADs, and there may be some of you that don't that are familiar with TADs, but maybe want to just get a brief refresher on how these things work. So that's what I'm gonna do first, is just give you a little bit of kind of TAD 101. There's much more to this to be said about TADs and how they work, and if you're so inclined, and I see on the agenda the Sidebar conferences that Mr. McCrae puts on are always great places to learn more in more detail about TADs and other tools, economic development tools, and then we'll dive into the very specifics about the TADs that are in place. So again, just as a bit of a review, and I'm gonna try to talk for no more than 10 minutes. I'm already a minute and a half in, so to give us plenty of time for you guys to ask questions. So I might speed through them just because I want to be conscious of your all's time and to give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end. But feel free to stop me in the middle if you want me to dive into something deeper. All good. But again, just a TAD. Almost everywhere else in the country calls them TIFs. So if you're reading, if you see articles and you see TIFs, that's the name. Tax increment financing is the name that most every other state uses. but they're talking about the same things as when we talk about TADs. So again, the idea, just kind of the high level idea, is that the city has approved boundaries on 2 TADs, and the idea is that the incremental property tax collections within those boundaries go into a special TAD fund and can only be spent within those boundaries. So you raise the property tax values, the growth in that property tax value goes into a TAD fund to be spent only within those boundaries. So you collect the incremental taxes within the boundaries, you spend it within the boundaries. Again, there's obviously more to it, but that's kind of the high level thinking here, right? And that you will eventually have a TAD fund, and it will be as the redevelopment agent, it will be your decision on how to spend that, but you can't go spending it anywhere else outside of the boundaries. Again, TADs are generally invisible to property owners. This isn't a tax increase. This is just an economic development tool. And so, if you get calls from angry property owners that say, well, now I'm in a TAD, that means my taxes are going up. Well, their taxes may go up, but it's not necessarily by the virtue of just being in a TAD. So that's important to know. And again, TAD is a very, I would say, mainstream economic development tool in this day and age. It's used, again, all over the state, all over the country. And it's by our best estimate, it's funded over $1 billion in redevelopment initiatives now since really in the past 20 years or so. So again, just big ideas. Where would a TAD be necessary? And these are kind of the, again, general rules of thumb. There is an opportunity to use TADs in lots of ways, but typically they're used where property values are stagnant or maybe declining. They are often in use in areas that may be a generally improving area, but there may be troublesome sites within the quote unquote improving area that aren't being lifted by the market in the same way that their neighbors are. And so a city can decide that those are prime targets for economic development tools, right? That property should be doing better than it is. We're going to try to use the TAD tool to get it back to where it ought to be, right? And again, just kind of talking in generalities here. And again, it could also be in areas where there is already development, but you're not seeing the type of development that is desired by the city, that is planned for by the city. You want a higher level of development, a more diverse mix of development. TADs can be used there. And it can be used to incentivize developers to show up. It can also be used to get infrastructure in place. So it can kind of go either way. And usually it's a combination of those two ideas.
Hey, Geoff.
Yes.
Your slides aren't advanced. We're still just seeing your first slide.
Oh, really? Sorry about that.
Well, I don't know if everybody else is seeing the same thing.
Okay.
Page 1.
Yes, we're
right.
saying the same.
All right. I apologize. Well, there were only 2 slides. This one and this one. I'm not sure. I'm just going to leave it in this format. So just make sure we get moving here and not fumbling around. So this, are you seeing it advance now, Chris? New slide. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that. So last one on kind of TAD 101, and then we'll get into your specific TADs in South Fulton. But this is, as I like to say, when I talk about TADs, this is the classic TAD diagram. And again, I could spend 20 minutes talking about this, and I'm not going to, but this is basically, a diagram of how TADs work, right? And that you're locking in a base value. So within the boundaries that we're about to look at, with the property taxes that are being collected within those boundaries today will continue to be collected. Well, that were collected in 2020. So the base value was set on December 31st of 2020, and that level of property tax collections that occurred last year that went into the city's general fund will continue to do so. So it's only the incremental property tax values as the tax assessor comes out now in 2021. Any property values, well, the collective property values of the TAD, of the properties within the TAD boundaries if they are above the base value, that incremental, that growth in the property tax value will go into a TAD fund, and that will be used to fund, potentially to incentivize development or fund infrastructure. And that can be done in various ways that we won't get too much into here because I want to get into the boundaries themselves. But you can use that future income stream in various ways. Typically, it's used through to monetize that future income stream up front to get infrastructure in place at the beginning of a project, for example. That's where a TIF bonding mechanism can come into play. And so you can bond against that future income stream to monetize the future values up front to get projects out of the ground. And then at some point in the distant future, probably 20, 25, even 30 years, the TAD will be dissolved, and then all the new growth will then go into the general fund. So that's really the key, is that not only are you incentivizing and getting development, creating activity, creating economic development, that at the end of the day, when the TAD has achieved its goals, then you've accelerated the general fund tax digest. So that's, so there's sort of the short game and the long game to TADs. So that brings us to you all in South Fulton. So we worked with Chris and the city to get this redevelopment plan that we just see the cover here of a draft that we were working on. But this is about well, you can see it's about a 90-page document. And this is really, I guess you can kind of call this the business plan for the TAD, or for the two TADs, right? So one redevelopment plan, two TADs, and in there, the main thing that this does is it sets up the boundaries, which parcels are in, which parcels are out, and it lists each and every parcel that is within the TAD. But other thing beyond that, it does anticipate what type of growth might occur. It's very specific. The state law is very specific about what has to be in one of these redevelopment plans to set up a TAD. And so there's a lot of kind of math, if you will, that goes in here, thinking about what the increment could be if development occurs in a way that we think it might. None of those calculations, none of that math is required to be actualized, if you will. So the main thing that this does is it sets up the boundaries, it lists the parcels. Everything else in there is really a forecast. It may or may not turn out the way that we think it might, but it gives you sort of a vision of what is possible within the TAD. But the only requirement coming out of the city council approving this plan is that you set up two TADs, and it tells you which parcels are in those TADs. Everything else is kind of up to you at this point and how this goes. All right, let's see. Okay, so now what do the TADs look like? Well, we've got two TADs. We've got the east side TAD and we've got the west side TAD. And you can see them here. We'll zoom in a minute, but you can see the east side TAD is in kind of the pink orange shading color, mostly focused on Old National area, Red Oak area, and then and this is what is true redevelopment, right? Those are corridors that have been aging for a while now. They need some love and attention, and the TAD can help bring that love and attention to these historic suburban strip corridors that need some redevelopment. The blue TAD, the blue-green west side TAD is what we're calling the Great Frontier of South Fulton, the city of South Fulton, in that you've got some big plans for a city center and other ideas, and that's really your growth corridor, growth area in over on the west side, the northwest side. And so the TAD there is really intended to help put infrastructure in place, for example, to get some of the new growth, new development that wants to occur over there. So again, just kind of zooming in, Old National, Roosevelt Highway area, you can kind of see, and again, if you're wondering, well, I know this one parcel over there, is we in or we out? The answer is it's in the plan, right? And there is a list of parcels that are in there. So this again is focused. This TAD is focused really on redevelopment again, one of the things that a city that you should know, the requirements of a TAD is that no more than 10% of your overall tax digest of the city can be in the entirety of all of your TADs, right? And so you could have 10 TADs, you can have one TAD, but no more than 10% of your overall tax digest can be in all of your TADs, however many you have. And so this area that is shaded here represents just over 4% of your property tax digest. So even if this was your only TAD, you'd still have opportunities to create more. You've got 6% of your digest to work with just after creating this one TAD. And another kind of an important point about this area as to why this area is justified for a TAD, to have a TAD in the first place. Again, the state law has specific requirements about what constitutes an area that can have a TAD, that qualifies for under the TAD law. And in this case, the justification that was used in the redevelopment plan is the fact that there is a substantial number of structures that are more than 40 years old. So the analysis that we did tells us that almost 50%, right under 50% of the parcels within that area shaded, almost half of those parcels were built, or the buildings on them were built before 1980. So that certainly is substantial to be 40 years old or old, to have half of all the buildings in that area are over 40 years old. And again, because of the nature of the sort of suburban strip corridor, not many of them are necessarily historical, right? Or anything that's going to make it onto the historic register per se. And in fact, that's a requirement in this plan to say if there are any historic structures in there that have been designated. And I don't remember, I don't think there's any in this TAD. I think there was some in the other. I could be wrong on that, I have to check. But nevertheless, that's the justification. This is an aging strip corridor, and the values, and again, this is straight from the law, the Title 36, Chapter 44 of the Georgia Code says that another justification is that the buildings are of relatively low value. So we did an analysis that told us that almost 90% of the parcels are valued below 175,000 in that area, which is again substantially lower than the city overall. So that justifies the east side TAD. And then again, I'm not going to get into this in detail, but as part of the plan, we had to come up with some likely development scenarios. Again, likely as to what might occur. And so we worked with Chris and others to really determine what parcels might be in play, just where might redevelopment happen. And those that are shaded in red are the ones where we forecasted potential development to come up with some pretty big numbers on what might occur. But again, this is just a forecast. Nothing says this is going to happen. It's just to say it could happen. The last thing I should have mentioned earlier is that, not the last thing, but one of the things I should have mentioned earlier is that these areas were identified really through your economic development strategy that was done really about a year prior to when we showed up. If I remember right, I think it was BAE, Bay Area Economics, who identified nodes within the city where economic development could occur. And so that was really our guide as to, okay, why do these TADs look the way they look? How do they show up here? Why not somewhere else? Well, we already had a guide that was your economic development strategy pointing us in the direction of these areas. And so our work was really built, very much so built on top of the work that had been done previously. All right, so that's the east side TAD. The west side TAD looks like this. Again, over on the east of the west side TAD, you've got Camp Creek Parkway coming through. And on the west of the west side TAD, you've got Fulton Industrial coming through, US 92. So again, some of the major corridors and some of the major growth areas, some of the big plans that you all have as a city are encapsulated within this area. And again, the justification for the west side TAD is not like the east side TAD. It's not an aging strip corridor or collection of strip corridors. This area qualifies as an area with inadequate infrastructure. Again, part of what we have to do in the plan is we identify previous plans that have been done, right? You all have big ideas for some of these parcels, but there's really no infrastructure there to make it happen. And so that's the idea here, is that that this is an area that doesn't have the infrastructure that allows you to achieve the vision that you laid out before we started working on it. And so therefore, this area qualifies as a TAD. And again, same idea that we identified a collection of potential redevelopment that could occur within the boundaries of the West Side TAD. And you can kind of see some of that there. Again, getting to some big numbers, just really kind of anticipating what might happen. Nothing about what's in this plan has to happen or is required to happen or changes anything when a development might want to occur at Town Center, for example, the planned Town Center. They still got to show up and get their permits and go through all the things that any developer would need to do to work, with the city. It's just that there is this additional tool available to facilitate a public-private partnership. Is really what you're potentially doing over here, is facilitating public-private partnerships through the use of the TAD. Last thing I think I'll say, well, two more slides. So again, and I'm not going to try to read all of this to you, but basically this idea that you could monetize the future growth that we've identified through a bonding mechanism, or you can use the developer, the partnership that you're developing could use a pay-as-you-go approach, or pay-go. And again, won't get deep into that right now, but just to know that there's various ways in which this TAD can be used depending on the project, and it all depends on the project. And finally, on this slide, what can those funds be used for? And I've alluded to this, but largely, I won't say anything, but a lot of things. Mostly it has to do with bricks and mortar, right? So TAD funds can be used to pay for physical things within the development. That's typically how it's going to be used. It's clean and safe to say we're going to use this TAD money to build a parking garage or to build a parkway through this development or something like that. It can be used for lots of other things as well, as long as they're related to some sort of physical development. And again, the law is pretty flexible on what it can be used for, but the TAD is intended to help get redevelopment done or ground up development. And this is the last slide, just a bit over my time, but I will say this, is that the TAD is going to be most effective if the county and the schools agree to participate in the TAD, which I don't believe they have yet. I don't know all the details, and I'm sure Chris could tell you more. But basically, you have set up this TAD. Your property tax increment within the boundaries is in the city. When I say yours, I'm saying the city's property tax digest within the TAD is in. The TAD is there. It can be used. But right now, the county and the schools millage, which make up the vast majority of the property tax collected anywhere within the city, is not pledged into the TAD yet. And so really only when the county and the schools are pledged into the TAD is when you've got your most effective tool. And the last thing I'll say is that this does not include personal property taxes. It doesn't include sales taxes. So those are separate issues, and that those are not pledged into the TAD. That if you grow your sales tax digest within the city, for example, that continues to flow in all the ways that it would otherwise. It's not in the TAD, if you will. So with that, I will open the floor for questions, or you guys tell me if you want me to keep talking or ask questions or move on to something else in the agenda. But again, it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the opportunity to work with the city.
Sure. We'll let the board members ask questions at this time. Mr. Perlman, I think you had a question.
I had to step out for 1 sec. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. Is this geography identical to the DDA geography?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So the DDA area is bigger but it includes both of the geographies of the TAD, yes.
Okay, got it. So that's important. That's a better answer. Okay, so I still am looking for a searchable map that we can work with.
Yes, as you remember at the last meeting,
Yeah.
we discussed, we actually just hired a GIS manager that started this week. And so we're working with him to get the map so that you can identify exactly which parcels are in the TAD.
That would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, that was one of my questions as well. Also like to know what is the process by which we are going or moving forward to get the involvement of the schools and the county. That's probably more of a question for Mr. Pike. And signing on to this TAD piece. And the other second question is how long do you think it takes for us to actually see the benefit of the TAD? How long does it take for that to come into play?
Sure. Well, to answer your first questions, we have we have met and presented to the county administrator, county chairman, and our representatives from the Fulton County Commission about participating with the TAD. I have since had subsequent conversations with their finance director, who's in the process of doing an analysis. So we've started the process with the county. We have had a similar meeting with school board chairman, with the two school board members that represent our area and the superintendent, and then had subsequent conversations with their finance director. I will say that the school system is probably going to be a heavier lift. As I understand, the Fulton County school systems only participate with the Camp Creek Marketplace TAD, and they have not participated in any other TADs to this point. But what I understand is that the board is adopting a new TAD policy, and then our TAD will be ran through that policy, and then I guess they will make a decision based on whether or not they're going to participate. I will say, and I've said this publicly before, that, it benefits the school system probably more than anyone to participate in the TADs because, as I explained to them when I was doing the presentation, they have eSplosh. And so when our residents go to Douglas County to shop, or they go to Fayette County to shop, or they go to the city of Atlanta to shop, the school system's not getting any of that sales tax money. And so the TAD will allow us to build the retail infrastructure that we need in the city to keep those sales tax dollars here that ultimately benefit the school system. I don't know if that resonated with them or not, but we can prove without a doubt that our residents are going to other communities to purchase products, and those community school systems are getting that sales tax revenue. So I would encourage you to, talk to your school representatives and explain to them the importance of the TAD.
The other thing I'll say that I was searching this morning, I couldn't remember if we talked about this, but many cities they set up a TAD and they go through all the necessity to set up a TAD, and then somebody walks into City Hall and says, "Hey, I'd like to do a project within that TAD that you just set up." And in some places, they're excited about it, but they don't really have policies and procedures set up as to how to even make that ask. And so, again, I don't know if that's something that you've talked about yet. And if you haven't, it's perfectly fine because these are brand new. But at some point, I think you'll want to have a pretty detailed explanation of how do you ask, and sort of what are the policies and procedures that you all are going to use as the redevelopment agent. So just something to kind of keep on the radar screen.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. I'm glad you brought that up, Geoff, about so it would be how we envision this is that we would get together, flesh out some ideas on what this policy looks like. Obviously, Geoff, I think you have some examples that you could probably send us. That would be great, that we can begin to work on, so that we make sure that we do have a policy in place. So when people do come and ask, and people have already been asking, so it's already starting to happen, about how we're going to utilize the TAD and in which manner. And so, and I'm sure Dan has a lot to contribute to that discussion as well. So it's good to have him on board to help us develop that. And then Pastor Williams, the other part of your question about timing, I think once we have a plan and we have a pretty good idea about what we want to do, I think we can do any several ways. We can have a wait and collect and then spend money as we collect it, which is, a viable option. Or you could potentially bond finance projects. So if you have something, so for example, if we're saying that we're ready to move forward with the town center project, but we need infrastructure to do that, we can then go and get bond financing to help upfront some of the cost and then service the debt on the bond with revenues that are collected from the tax allocation district over the life of the TAD. So there's many methodologies that we can utilize to actually accomplish the projects, and you can speed them up or slow them down based on how you choose to finance them.
We worked with Gwinnett County, I guess I can't keep track of time anymore, 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember, but they had a developer who had a piece of land in sight and needed a lot of infrastructure and help. And so decided the TAD was the avenue to go. And so we, along with others, helped set up Gwinnett County TAD number 6. And, from the time it got approved by the county, in that case, to the time that the bond docs were signed was probably no more than 2 months, 3 months, maybe 3 months, but certainly not longer than that. So it can go fast. If you've got a motivated developer who sees the benefit of a TAD, the city's excited to see it come, it can move pretty fast to get there once all the pieces are in place.
Great. Any other questions or comments about the TAD?
I have one. In what sense, if at all, are the TAD areas competing against each other, and is that any more or less than what would have happened with or without the TADs?
That's a good question. I think the idea really is that these are two, the dynamics in each area are pretty different, and so that they're not necessarily competing, but certainly, that's kind of the nature of capital flows, right? That you're always competing with somebody. So I wouldn't say that they're not competing with each other at all. But the big idea, I think, is that, the opportunities along Old National is a different kind of opportunity than at the town center, for example. And so, so I would say they do compete to a degree, but, basically what you're doing as a city, when you identify these, you're saying, this is where these are priority areas, right? These are areas that we want to work on. We've now got a tool to work on them with. And so, you can have more than one priority, obviously. And so, I think that's kind of the big idea that you are identifying where you're putting your chips down in terms of where you want to see development happen. And so in that case, the door is wide open, certainly.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions about the TAD?
One last one, and I'm just asking this for clarification. In the event that a citizen of the community approaches and asks the question about the impact of the TAD on them, again, I just want to be clear. I'm clear on the economic development part, that it will become beneficial to the community long term. But the impact it would have on homeowners, particularly in the community, the best way to have that conversation, or what information to share with them in terms of the TAD itself.
I think there's a few good answers to that. One of them, I think, is that, again, that idea that these are priority areas, and that the idea is that as the city has aspirations to grow, not necessarily the boundaries, but to grow within the current boundaries of the city, right? And so the idea is that these are areas that again, all the way back to the economic development strategy work that was done. These are the areas where we see growth really, happening, and that we want to encourage the growth within these boundaries. And that means, if your concern as a homeowner is, I don't want to see a bunch of, commercial development, out my front window. It's going to create traffic, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's one thing that could be a response, is that, we understand that, that in our single family neighborhoods is not where we want to put our economic development efforts because of your concerns over traffic, et cetera. So we're putting them within these boundaries. And so that's one thing that a TAD can help you accomplish, is to concentrate the development that you want to see so you can grow your property tax base without intruding on your single family neighborhoods.
Pastor, here's one thing in my experience to look out for with residential issues. We had this with a TAD I helped set up recently. Oddly enough, there was resistance to the TAD from homeowners outside the tax allocation district, which, kind of puzzled me, because if you're going to install infrastructure, it'll help if you pass through the district and it's road improvements, that benefits you. But their concern was that their home values would go up and their taxes would go up. Normally you think of, home is most folks' primary asset, so the value going up often is viewed as a positive thing. But if you're not planning on selling it, what it does is to cause you to pay more taxes to live in the same house. That TAD was created, and I think perhaps the concern went away as a result of exactly what improvements were intended, and maybe the concern about the value going up proved not to be founded. But one of the advantages that the tax allocation district offers, it's often cited as a so-called halo effect, that, as Geoff said, you can only spend your money inside the TAD, but a rising tide lifts all boats. And if you're able to redevelop one area, then in a variety of ways, economic and psychological, it helps the neighboring areas as well. Very much a question of fact.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that, we want to make sure we hammer home is, when you're in a TAD, you're not paying more property tax than if you were outside of the TAD. You're paying the same millage rate as everyone else in the city. It just, on the back end, it gets divvied up when the tax assessor collects the money.
A lot of confusion about that. I'm always, there's a reason that when we have the referendum, the ballot says you're voting on redevelopment powers. It doesn't say tax allocation district because it's got the word tax in it.
Yeah.
The last thing I might add in that, just in terms of thinking about common, misconceptions, if you will, is that the TAD is actually a very much market-driven tool, in that, you're not, if a developer comes in and say, hey, I need $1 million to get my deal out of the ground, you're not raiding the general fund of the city and writing checks randomly to developers. This tool is such that the incentive is really only available if the developer delivers, right? Because someone has to create that tax increment to use. And so it's incumbent upon your partners, your private sector partners, to be able to deliver a product that will increase the property tax value to allow you to access those funds to do the infrastructure up front, for example. And so I think that's something that is sometimes folks miss with TADs in particular, that, we're not taking money out of the taxpayers' pockets to pay a developer to come in and build something that we may or may not agree with. It's incumbent upon them to deliver a project that lifts the property taxes in order for them to use their portion of the property taxes in collaboration with the city.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Geoff. We certainly appreciate your time.
Yes.
And Madam, go ahead.
I'm going to take off. It's good to see you all. I'm always available to you if you have any questions on anything.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Geoff. Jeff's a superstar.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. You are too. But good to see everyone.
Uh-oh. All right. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Next on our agenda, and again, thank you, Geoff, Koski for the great presentation. And Chris, thank you
Mhm.
as well. Next on our agenda is economic development updates.
Yes, ma'am.
And Chris?
Yeah, what we wanted to do is kind of have some standing reports on you all's agenda, just so you know high level things that are going on, so that you're aware as you move forward with your um, positions as DDA members and things that may impact some of the things that the Downtown Development Authority are working on. And so we thought that what we would do is just kind of bring you some updates from general things that are happening within the department so that you can be aware of those things. And so if you get asked questions on the streets, things of that nature, you'll be able to address those uh, with some level of information. And so um, we're going to be very brief because we want to try to get out of here quickly. And as soon as we bring other staff folks on, they'll be doing these reports. But until that time, you're stuck with myself and then tourism manager Chantel Francois, who is on the call as well. She'll be doing some updates on where we are with some of our tourism assets as well. Because as we all know, or you may not know, is tourism is a part of economic development. It's actually the #2 industry in the state of Georgia behind agriculture. So tourism is very important to us from an economic development standpoint. And so she'll share some information as well. The only thing that I want to share real quickly, and most of you all may know or should know that our Small Business Resource Center, we have one at the Red Oak where our offices are now located since we have been evicted from City Hall. We are now located at the Red Oak offices there on Roosevelt Highway. So if you need to find economic development, that's where we are. That is particularly where the DDA office will be as well. So if we have meetings and stuff, that's where they'll take place once we get back to some in-person stuff. We're actually going to be bringing some programming on board for the small businesses as well. And so that's something that we're really excited about. The other thing that we're excited about is that we actually have posted last week for a Main Street manager position for the Red Oak Historic District. And so we hope to have that Main Street manager on board before our next meeting so that we can have them introduced to the group. But they will be responsible for really focusing on helping bring economic development to these Main Street districts, so one being the Red Oak District, and there'll be another one for the Old National District once we get the lease completed on that facility for the Old National location. And they will be really an extension of myself, where they'll be taking on some economic development responsibilities in those corridors. And we hope to really help that move that East Side TAD along. And so once we have those folks on board, that will help also relieve some of the responsibilities that I have as far as the numerous things that we're working on in the city of South Fulton from an economic development standpoint. And having said that, I want to turn it over to Chantel just to give a few updates about her work that she's doing with tourism and the phenomenal things that are going to be coming down the pipe here shortly that you all should be aware of from your positions as DDA board members.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Chantal Francois, as Christopher mentioned, manager of the tourism department within the city of South Fulton and over the South Fulton Convention and Visitors Bureau, otherwise known as the South Fulton CVB. So first, let me share with you the goal of the CVB, and that is to promote the city of South Fulton, not only as a business and leisure destination, but also for small market meetings and for sporting events. So we've been real busy at just trying to implement the department and get things started. We're just about a year old, so we're still in the infancy stage, but we still have been doing a lot. We have started off with the South Fulton United Fund last year, where we supported the hospitality community by providing meals for our frontline workers, over 200 meals every day for 2 months. And that was an effort as well to support the restaurants, which, as you know, was severely hit with COVID. The tourism industry on a whole has been totally devastated with the COVID infections that's been going on. So we've been trying to just pivot and do things differently and work around it and just get real busy with our social media and online efforts. We are currently about to launch our website. We're in the last stages of doing that. We just started with our social media, with Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter just last week. And we've had a really good response to that. We've had live feeds that's been viewed over 300 times in 24 hours. We've gotten good responses. We have comments from people like Mark Winnie at WSB and other folks within the community and Atlanta tourism area. We worked with our communications department in producing a South Fulton tourism photo library, where we went out and commissioned a photographer to capture some of all the tourism assets within the city so that we can have that for, again, social media, advertising, periodicals, print media. And with that, we've partnered with advertisers such as the Atlanta Airport Guide. We have a really good partnership with them where we're on their website as well. We're in their magazines. Another person would be the South Fulton Lifestyle Publications. We're partnering with them and getting some things done, hoping to get some TV coverage as well. And to add to Dan and John's conversation about good media, we're happy to say that we were just featured on Fox 5 News last week for a partnership that we did with the Southern Eastern Climbers Association at Boat Rock. And a lot of folks are not familiar with that and didn't realize that we have rock climbing right here in the city. And again, that's one of our goals, is to bring awareness to some of the products that we have and get that exposed to the larger community and the United States and international as well. So we were happy to have that online. I do have a copy of that when I'm done. Chris, if we have time, we can show it so they can see that. So we're getting some positive coverage that way, and we're happy about that. We've also done the South Fulton University, where we speak to the community and kind of just inform them again, like what we're doing today, who we are, what we do, and what are the goals of the South Fulton CVB and what that means for the community and the city as a whole. We also did some promotions for National Tourism Week, which was in May of last year. And again, we did that online, of course, because we had to work around the COVID pandemic and just kind of do things differently. But we're looking to do a whole lot more. We want to do things like creating some of our own signature events. So we'll have like foodie days, we'll have a restaurant week, we'll do festivals, and just kind of create things that are unique to the city and kind of put a print on things that we can promote and encourage to have visitors come in, and especially overnight visitors, because we want to increase the hotel night stay, which is where we get our tax dollars to actually function as a CVB. So again, we're looking forward to great things going, and I can share that video with you, Chris, if you allow me to share that screen.
Yeah, it's on shared screen.
Okay. And I'm hoping I can get volume as well. So let's see. I want to make sure that it plays. So please let me know, Chris, if you hear volume here.
No.
Yes? No?
Nope.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, I think I've got it now.
Is Boat Rock Climbing Park. It's a place where officials say people and tourists can enjoy climbing some of the area's tallest boulders. The city's tourism department partnered with the Southeastern Climbers Coalition to bring awareness to attractions offered within the city.
We've got climbers out here from all over the South, which speaks directly to the goal of the South Fulton CVB, and that is to position the city of South Fulton as a premier destination for business, leisure, small meetings, and of course, sports and events just as this.
The park also has trails you can walk and areas for you to sit down and have a nice picnic with friends and family. Looks like a lot of fun.
So that was our good news and positive coverage there for City of South Fulton. And so much so that they wanted to come back this week and actually do a feature on Good Day Atlanta with Paul Milliken. But due to the adverse weather that we had yesterday, he decided to do that from his home and cover the story either today or yesterday. So we'll have that as well on Good Day Atlanta. So these are the type of things that we're looking to do, and we're happy about that. You can visit us at Visit Sofu on Facebook and Instagram. Please follow us, and we'll have great things to share for you there.
Excellent.
Questions?
Any questions from the board?
I have a comment.
Mhm.
I am particularly interested in and excited about the opportunities for tourism here. You know, I've worked with the Merchants Association for a number of years and lived here for a number of years. And I can remember when, I don't know that this is still the case, the South Fulton Tennis Center was rated one of the top 10 premier tennis centers in the nation. And we had a lot of Alta tournaments and people coming this way. In the park off of Old National, Marquise Grissom used to have an annual tournament with John Smoltz. And as merchants, one of the things we've looked at, you know, we looked at a few years ago, can we have things like a robotics tournament here or a chess tournament? Or I was at Piedmont Park a few years ago and they had, you know, a regional tournament. It was basically a dog and frisbee competition. And so I asked, you know, what does it take to, before you get to the region, what does it take to host one of these? And they said, basically connect with us, and it's an open field, a football-sized field that's marked off. And so I guess the long and short of it is, you know, a lot of these things really don't take a lot of money to implement. It's just a matter of hooking up at the right places. And I'm excited about where we can go with this.
Absolutely. And it's about partnerships, relationships, and of course, selling the city. So that's the goal of the CVB. We also will be a part of the sales department there, selling the City of South Fulton, where we attend conferences and we actually bid on events such as, you know, sporting events, competitions, like you say, a robotics conference, anything of that nature. We will be bidding on small meetings that will be able to fit our community and support the hotels. And that's where we received that Fox 5 interview, is by sponsoring the Southeast Coalition Climbers competition. And that went on from March till actually February 15th until March 15th was the last day. So within that whole month, we were being featured all over the United States and worldwide for rock climbing. And folks were just like, wait a minute, City of South Fulton, there's rock climbing? The folks that lived right around there didn't know it was there. So that's why the news was so excited about it. They were supposed to hold that story. And by the time I got home that evening, I was getting calls saying, hey, you guys are climbing rocks in South Fulton? And I'm like, who would know this? We just did this. And the story was not supposed to come out until the following week. So they were all excited about it, went ahead and featured it on the news, and then decided to follow up with the Good Day Atlanta portion. So those are the type of things we want to do and bring that positive, good news to the City of South Fulton, encouraging not only just leisure travel, business, sporting events, and small market meetings of all kinds.
All right, thank you, Chantel. Vice Chair Winbush, you are in charge of the meeting now. The chairwoman had to get off the call. She had some technical difficulty. So you're in charge of the rest of the meeting, and we're at the basic training portion of the meeting. And so,
All right.
just want to remind everyone, we sent out those dates for the training. I got confirmation from Board Member Williams and the chairwoman for their meeting preferences, but did not receive feedback from everyone else. So if you would let me know when you would like to meet, we will get you signed up for that. But just remember, you're required to do 8 hours of training within your first year of being appointed to the DDA.
Well, I want to apologize first. I had to step away at the beginning of the meeting. I've got a client that's having an emergency, so I had to take care of that and still going on. But also, Chris, I need to get with you because I didn't get that email. I don't think I did, but I'll have to go back and regroup myself. Technologically, I see.
Yeah. Well, so remember, so because of open record requests that you could potentially get, we set up a separate email for every member. So whenever I send correspondence to you, it's going to be at your last name.sfdda@gmail.com. So whatever that email we set up for y'all, and you can have it just come directly to your phone or something. So when I send an email, you'll get a notification. But we wanted to make sure that we kept your DDA email separate from your personal or business emails. I know it's I know it's a little more cumbersome having to have another email, but trust me, when Dan comes to you and says, "Hey, we've got this request for this information, I need to look at all your emails," you'll thank us for that.
Be glad.
And can you take us on out, Chris? I don't have the agenda.
Yes, sir. I can. The other item on the agenda is public comments, and so we have some people on the call. If you have public comment, if you would just raise your hand and we'll recognize you all in order. If you have a public comment. I don't see anybody wanting to be recognized for public comment. I'll give you another second or two. Anyone on the call like to make a public comment to the board? All right. I don't see any public comments, and I see that the chairwoman has made it back on the call.
I tell you, thank you.
I know it's been running.
I'm telling you. Thank you all for your patience.
Yes, ma'am. We are at the question and comment part on the agenda for the board members.
All right. I will turn it over to any of the board members for any questions, concerns, or comments, please.
I'd just like to say publicly thank you, Chantel, for your presentation and all the work that you're doing on behalf of the city. And if somehow, Chris, we could, our correspondence, those emails that you've created could be shared specifically, I don't know about everyone else, but you can share mine with them so that whatever updates or important things that are happening that we can know about can be shared. That would be great.
Okay. We'll be starting a newsletter, an e-newsletter for the CVB. So we'll put all y'all's emails in that so you'll get those newsletters. So when things come up, but also we have social media. All of our handles for social media are just visit SOFU. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We'll be starting a YouTube channel soon as well. So all of that will be available to you all.
I just wanted to add to Mr. Winbush's comment about the tennis courts. They still are considered world-class tennis courts. They're actually being resurfaced right now and renovated to be opened coming, I believe, in May. So we will be able to go ahead and start competing and going after tennis competitions as well. And that's something that we plan to do and work with the tennis center with.
All right, anyone else? And certainly to Chantel, we're looking forward to meeting in person. But thank you for your presentation this morning to the board and to the public. And Christopher, also, we definitely want to thank you for your support always. You know, we want to make sure that we're prepared. We're all new with this and excited and nervous all at the same time. But to have a team of support like you two is making us feel more comfortable. So we're looking for, I think I speak for the board when I say we're looking forward to growing and learning and giving input, working right alongside of you all to do a lot in the city of South Fulton.
Oh, thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is our next meeting, which will be held April 16th at 11 a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Chris, was there anything else in terms of moving on to before we get to the items for future agenda? Is there anything that we missed and we needed to discuss?
No, ma'am, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Items for future agenda, with that's all on you?
Or if there are things that the board members need. I know, Mr. Perlman, we're going to be working on getting that TAD map put together, and then circle around with Dan to start putting those policies together for the TAD, because folks are going to be coming out of the woodworks here shortly. And so we want to make sure we have a policy in place to bring to the board to look at and approve, and then get to the mayor and council for them to look at and approve as well. So, we'll be working on that.
Chris is absolutely right about the need for that. I mean, this is going to be very popular, and it'll happen all of a sudden. And we need to be proactive and not reactive.
Yep.
And Dan, good to see you on the call. Thank you, as always.
Be here. I'm glad to be part of the city of South Fulton.
Absolutely. So if there's not anything else on the agenda, we'll go ahead and end the meeting this session, and we'll adjourn the meeting. And was there anything else, Chris? Did I miss?
Good.
We're good?
Yes, ma'am, we're good to go.
Well, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the weekend. And we'll talk on our next call.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you all. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.